Hi. Hey guys. That little hiccup we had a couple minutes ago is it basically automatically happens like right away. So I closed off and ended that stream and it went and looped back to start another. Oh, there's mine. I love that. Special thanks to Benthoven and Dapper for that one, because that's just good. So if you see another live go live right now, let me know, because it's not quite showing up, but it looks like it's thinking about it. So if that happens, just if you see it, it's just this stream already happening. So, you know, YouTube's got a little bit of a bug, I guess? Anyway, I did have a lovely snack. It was a rice cake with crunchy peanut butter on top. Delicious. So, I hope everybody's doing well today. I picked up a couple little for funsies stories because I thought this was a little bit amusing, and you know, I just thought it was a good one. So this is Rolling Stones, and the title got me. Canada sends patrols to, quote, prevent caravans of Americans from searching across the border. They're being funny. The person who said it is being funny because the whole caravan thing in America. So, since March, the US-Canada border has been closed to all but essential travel in an effort to contain the spread of covfefe. But Americans being Americans, they are floating the new regulations in the pursuit of their usual summer fun. Yeah, so anybody who doesn't know, the border, the US-Canada border cannot be crossed except for by essential travel by also direct family members, so either somebody you're married to or a child. That does not include aunts or uncles, and it does not include grandparents, but it does include like your mom or dad or your direct family. So the only way you can get across is if you're a Canadian. You can fly to America. You have to be in America for X amount of time, and then you can fly back to Canada, and you're required to do 14-day quarantine, which they check up on you for. But you also can't be American doing this. Only Canadians are allowed. Apparently everybody trusts the Canadians, but nobody trusts the Americans. I wonder why. Floating new regulations. According to NPR, quote, Canadian Border Patrol has effectively prevented caravans of Americans, quote, end quote, from crossing the border. Most are arriving by sailboat and luxury yachts. Those crossing the border have often told officials they are heading to Alaska to circumvent the new regulations. But because so many Americans are using the so-called Alaska loophole, authorities have increased restrictions. One reason Americans are being spotted is that Canadian boaters are using technology to monitor them, with the requirement that all passenger boats have to be equipped with tracking devices to help prevent weather-related accidents. Anyone with an internet connection can monitor border crossing and identify vehicles by type and country of origin. Quote, a number of us that are retired boaters and still members of the Council of the BC Yacht Club started looking at the number of American boats that were crossing our border, in spite of the prohibition by the federal government. President of BC Marine Parks Forever, George Creek, told NPR. But Creek said that the Americans are starting to catch on to the tracking. They're turning them off, quote, they're turning them off as they cross the border. We see them on the computer, and at a particular point, a few moments later, they're not there anymore, he said. Both Creek and his fellow Canadians do not appreciate border crossing Americans. As NPR points out, one poll found 8 out of 10 Canadians want the border with the United States to stay closed due to covfefe. Creek told NPR, is this a situation where where now the Canadian, like, Americans are pulling the thing they think all the Mexicans are doing, like, build a wall, we'll go by boat. What's happening? Creek told NPR he'd been angered by an incident involving Americans exiting a large yacht at an outpost for supplies, saying, quote, "They wandered the dock, 3 or 4 adults and the rest were teenagers with no social distancing, no masks, and went through the store as if they were just shopping at Walmart," end quote. All of this has frustrated Creek as America has failed to successfully quell the covfefe outbreak. Quote, "When I called the U.S. the biggest petri dish in the world, that was not just off the cuff," Creek said. And that's the end of this article. So I looked into it a little bit more, and I got this article over here. Americans go home. Canada's track U.S. boaters sneaking across the border. Canadians are typically seen as pretty friendly people, and until the covfefe pandemic, most were happy to welcome Americans. This is the NPR article that Rolling Stones referenced. But when the covfefe began to quickly spread in March, the U.S. and Canada shut their shared border to all non-essential traffic. Oh, if you guys have ever Google searched, looked at a Google Earth map, and you go and look at the border between Canada and the United States, there's actually a no-touching zone where, like, it's all really clear-cut, and there's like, and it like follows the whole way, and it's just a no-touching zone. There's actually still a few pieces of land that are in dispute about whether they belong to Canada or America, and the border just kind of switches back and forth. But when the covfefe began to quickly spread in March, the U.S. and Canada shut their borders to all non-essential traffic. Since then, Canada's Border Patrol has effectively prevented caravans of Americans and their RVs and their campers from surging across the border as they normally do each summer. But Americans can be crafty. Some have managed to enter Canada by telling Border Patrol officers that they are on their way to Alaska. This is known as the Alaska loophole. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police find several Americans who were hiking near Lake Louise in Alberta. Lake Louise is not on the way to Alaska. Inkboy for 2 says you should build a wall with Murica. With Murica? What do you mean? Murica should be the one paying for it. I can't. Fed up, Canada announced last week that it is cracking down on Americans who apparently don't know which way is north. The Americans are coming. The Americans are coming. I think this is funny. Foreigners are also arriving by boat, often on sailboats. Not often do you hear Americans described as foreigners. Like, that's not very often that you hear that. They're also arriving by boat, often on sailboats and luxury yachts. Many seek refuge in British Columbia's protected inland waters and marine parks, which are home to pods of killer whales and abundant wildlife. But the number of American pleasure craft arriving from Washington State has alarmed Canadians living just across the border. Yeah, you have to be careful if there's killer whales and larger marine life there. You need to be careful about bringing yachts into those kinds of areas. For George Creek, a former insurance agent whose home overlooks Nanaimo Harbor in British Columbia, it has been a call to action. Quote, "A number of us that are retired boaters and still members of the Council of the BC Yacht Club started looking at the number of American boats that were crossing our borders, in spite of the prohibition by the federal government," end quote, said Creek, president of BC Marine Parks Forever. I think that's this guy. And they can do so from their living rooms. Under international maritime law, every passenger ship must be equipped with an automatic identification system that is to remain on at all times. This allows for tracking ships in real time and helps prevent collisions in fog and bad weather. Anyone with a computer and an internet connection can click to see what kind of vessels are sailing, where they've recently been, and which country they are from. And plenty are from the United States. Creek estimates that right now some 30 to 40 American pleasure boats are cruising through British Columbia's pristine waterways. Lately, however, many have gone dark. Creek says that the Americans have figured out that they are being tracked through their transponders. Quote, they're turning them off as they cross the border, says Creek. We see them on the computer at a particular point. A few minutes later, they're not there anymore. And go, like, blip, 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 blip. What, did they get abducted? We know you crossed the border. Anybody seeing that would know that you just crossed the border. What are you doing? Our tracking systems, they've been jammed, sir. Raspberry. Oh. The maritime posse of retirees knows the boats didn't suddenly turn around or sink. Surprise! That's because Canadian boaters up and down the inland coast call and radio in the location of suspicious vessels, i.e. American boats. They report sightings to the RCMP's Marine Division, though it's unclear if any arrests have been made. Quote, the biggest petri dish in the world. It's just an equipment malfunction. Yes. American... Honest Red. I love chat. You guys kill me. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and hit the bell or whatever. American yachts sneaking across the border makes Creek and a lot of other Canadians angry. There's a widespread alarm at how fast the Covfefe virus has spread through the lower 48 and what many Canadians view as Americans' flagrant disregard for mask wearing and maintaining a safe social distance. A poll conducted by Nano's Research found that 8 in 10 Canadians want their borders to remain closed to non-essential U.S. traffic because of fears of Covfefe. When I called the U.S. The biggest petri dish in the world, that was not just off the cuff, says Creek. Creek is particularly concerned about the tiny isolated communities such as Refuge Cove and Desolation Sound, where boaters stop for fuel and food. Many are home to First Nations people and have no medical facilities. Canadian boaters recently got riled up after a large yacht from the U.S. stopped at one of the small outposts for supplies. Quote, they wandered the docks, said Creek bitterly. 3 or 4 adults and the rest were teenagers with no social distancing, no masks, and went through the store as if they were just shopping at Walmart. End quote. To boaters sneaking into Canada to enjoy its maritime parks and secluded coves, George Creek wants you to know you are being watched. Ooh! There's a correction added. An earlier version of the story mistakenly said that under international maritime law, every passenger boat must be equipped with an automatic identification system. In fact, every passenger ship must be equipped with the system. Okay, so it's not... It's passenger ships. So that was like a little bit of a correction and clarification, which is nice. This is a nice little that they added. Horses aren't aquatic. That's because they're riding on mooses. I mean, I do want to talk about the basilisk argument, but I don't, or discussion, but I don't want to talk about it right now. Helios. Okay, so here's the other, here's the other one from CBC. Officials cracked on Alaska-bound travelers crossing the U.S.-Canadian border. So, the Canadian Border Service Agency is tightening up the rules for Americans and other foreign nationals traveling through Western Canada on the way to Alaska in order to prevent the spread of Covfefe. Beginning Friday, which is, when was this posted? This was July 30th. So this is the update they're talking about, the Alaska loophole. Beginning Friday, foreign nationals traveling to Alaska for non-discretionary purposes will only be allowed to enter the country through 5 border crossings in Western Canada. Each visitor will be allowed a reasonable period of stay to make the journey, but will be limited to following the most direct route to Alaska, according to a CBSA press release. They must avoid all national parks, leisure sites, and tourism activities along the way, and must report to Canadian border offices when they leave the country. Every driver will be given a tag to hang from the rearview mirror to support compliance. The press release says that tag will include the date in which they must leave Canada. Get out! Stop! BC Premier John Horgan praised the new rules in a statement Thursday, thanking the federal government for listening to the concerns of the people living here in the province. We look forward to the day when our borders are open and we can welcome travelers from all over, but we aren't there yet, he says. John, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Yukon's Minister of Community Services, called the new rules great news. We had actually encouraged this, he said. A lot of conversations that I have had with Yukoners. Is that what you call that? Yukoners? Okay. And I'm just imagining a group of people named Connor. Yukoners. Oh. Is around concerns about Americans in transit and how to make sure that the situation can be safer. Right now, Americans are allowed 24 hours to drive through Yukon on their way to or from Alaska, and they're required to stick to a designated route. There have been concerns, though, that some travelers aren't following the rules. On Wednesday, Yukon Premier Sandy Silver said territorial officials have received hundreds of complaints about people violating Covfefe restrictions, and many of those complaints are about travelers from outside of the territory, or travelers from outside the territory. This guy, John, said the CBSA rules will make it easier to keep track of people coming and going from Yukon and Canada. I think it makes the overall system better, he said. And then here's some of the rules. So the rules state that anyone traveling to Alaska must cross at one of the following locations: Abbotsford in British Columbia, Coates in Alberta, Kingsgate, British Columbia, North Portal, Saskatchewan, and Osso's, British Columbia. I tried. They'll also be given a handout explaining that while traveling through Canada, they must avoid contact with others, remain in their vehicle whenever possible, not stop except when necessary, practice physical distancing, pay at the pump for gas, use drive-through to order food, wear a mask or face covering, use good hygiene at rest areas. Yeah, the normal stuff that everybody in Canada is doing. Failure to comply with these rules could lead up to fines of $750,000 and 6 months in jail. If a traveler causes a risk of imminent death or serious bodily harm by violating these rules, the potential consequences could be as severe as $1 million in fines and 3 years in prison. Canada ain't fucking around, bro! Growing anger over U.S. plates. The Canada-U.S. border has been closed to non-essential travel since March 21st because of Covfefe. Throughout that time, American travelers have been permitted to drive through Canada on their way to Alaska for necessary purposes, including work and going to their primary residence. Travelers have been encouraged to bring documentation proving the reasons for the trips through Canada. As the number of Covfefe cases and deaths has surged in the United States in recent weeks, there's been growing anger in many parts of Canada over the presence of cars with American license plates in some communities. RCMP fined 7 Americans last week for stopping to sightsee at Banff National Park. I want to see that. I'm curious. Why did that open twice? People driving cars with U.S. license plates say, quote, they've endured vandalism and harassment from Canadians. Oh, I want to read that one too. From Canadians convinced that they're Americans illegally in Canada who might potentially spread covfefe that causes covfefe. More covfefe, all the covfefe. There are several legitimate reasons why drivers of cars with U.S. plates could be in Canada. There could be essential workers and have immediate family in Canada, or be Canadian citizens or residents. The Canadian-U.S. border is currently set to remain closed to non-essential traffic until August 21st. They recently pushed that back again. This is what the tag looks like. Neat. Okay, so let's see. Canadian drivers with U.S. license plates harassed by fellow Canadians. One woman said someone keyed husband's car. Another said driver flipped her the finger. Okay, like, really? Really? Okay, that's kind of a big deal. Okay. So, let's take a look-see. So, they had a Texas plate. Some Canadians driving cars with U.S. license plates say that they've endured vandalism, harassment, and even minor assault from fellow Canadians convinced that they're Americans illegally in Canada. Lisa Watts said she was harassed twice in Calgary last month. She believes because of her Texas license plates. In one incident, she said the driver stopped right behind her car in the parking lot and glared at her. And in another situation, a driver tailgated her car for several kilometers before pulling up beside her and flipping her the finger. Quote, it made me angry, said Watt, a Canadian citizen who moved to Houston in 2000 for work. She drove to Calgary in June to visit her 84-year-old mother who was feeling isolated during the covfefe pandemic. Quote, I'm here to help my mother. I have every right to be here. Yeah. To help stop the spread of the covfefe, the Canadian-U.S. land border remains closed to non-essential traffic. As a result, some Canadians are alarmed when they spot cars with U.S. license plates, especially as covfefe cases south of the border escalate. There is reason for concern. Alberta RCMP said that since mid-June, they have fined 10 Americans $1,200 each after they snuck into Banff National Park. Americans are allowed to drive straight through Canada to Alaska for work or to return home, but they can't stop in Banff or anywhere else to see the sights. However, not all drivers of cars with U.S. license plates in Canada are breaking the rules. They could be Americans who are essential workers or have immediate family in Canada, or Canadian citizens, all of whom can enter the country legally. Watt wants Albertans to know she is a patriotic Canadian who's taking every precaution well in Canada. She self-quarantined for 14 days when arriving in Calgary and wears a face mask in stores. She said both incidents of harassment happened on June 21st, the day she finished her quarantine and headed to town to run errands. And that's her and her mom. And their little dog, too. You can't judge a book by its cover. As a result of her experiences, Watts started driving her mother's car, which has Alberta plates. Quote, I'm a little afraid to leave my car parked anywhere for fear somebody might do something to it, she said. I'd like people to understand that people with U.S. license plates have legitimate reason for being here. Mayor Phil Harding of the township of Muskoka Lakes also wants to spread that message. Quote, you can't judge a book by its cover, he said, said Harding, whose township is part of the Muskoka region, a vacation hotspot in Ontario. The mayor said he recently heard from several Canadians with U.S.-plated cars in the region who claimed that they were accused of being Americans unlawfully in Canada. Quote, you shouldn't be here. Americans aren't allowed. How did you get across the border? End quote, said Harding about the types of accusations the drivers have fielded from local residents. Car keyed at Marina. In one case, a woman reported that her husband's car, which has Michigan plates, was scratched with a key, said the mayor. Excuse me. CBC News confirmed the incident with the woman who said the approximately meter long scratch appeared after the car had been parked in the marina on June 6th. The woman said she and her husband are Canadian, but that her husband works for an American company and drives the company car with U.S. plates. The woman asked that their names be kept confidential because her husband doesn't want his workplace associated with the story. Quote, "We think it's terrible and are really aware that we are a target with our U.S. plated company vehicle," said the woman about the incident in an email. Quote, "This makes you aware that cross-border tension is building," end quote. In another incident in Huntsville, also the Muskoka region, Ontario Provincial Police, OPP, said a Canadian filed a report after he was allegedly accosted by two men upstate over the Florida plates on his car. OPP spokesperson Jason Foles said the incident happened on June 12th at a car wash. Quote, "They harassed him, they assaulted him, and the assault was they poked him in the chest, demanding to know why he was in Canada." Foles said the man is a snowbird who spends winters in Florida and owns a car with Florida plates. People are stressed, quote, "People are stressed about covfefe, and it comes out in strange ways. Perhaps one of those ways," said Foles about the incident. "This is perhaps one of those ways." Bleh. Lawyer avoids crossing the border. U.S. immigration lawyer Len Saunders said several of his clients who are dual citizen Canadian U.S. citizens or essential workers have complained of mean looks when driving their U.S. plated cars in Canada. As a result, Saunders says he avoids crossing the border, even though he can as an essential worker and as a dual citizen. Quote, "I'm concerned about being socially shamed up there in BC, driving a U.S. plated car because I've heard from multiple client stories of dirty looks," said Saunders, whose office sits close to the British Columbia border in Blaine Walsh. He said he can understand why some Canadians get upset when spotting U.S. license plates in the country, considering covfefe cases are spiking in some U.S. states. But they must remember that many people driving U.S. plated cars in Canada are there for a valid reason, Saunders said. Quote, they really have to look at the big picture before they pass judgment. This was the author, Sophia Harris, if anybody is interested. So I would like to point out, as much as it sucks that people are getting dirty looks and the middle finger, of course you shouldn't be poked in the chest, and of course you shouldn't be accosted because of your license plate. However, if this is what's counting as being a big deal of Americans being harassed, I'm glad that this is the worst story we're hearing. Nobody's been being like jumped or attacked, and nobody's been shot, unlike some of the other stories you may have heard recently. So, bad times. So let's see about what happened when these people got fined. So the RCMP fined 7 Americans last week for stopping to sightsee in Banff National Park. Buh. So these are the pictures. License plates from the U.S. states. See, this is the thing, right? When you start hearing stories that Americans are illegally crossing the border, people start getting like, hey, why are you here? We don't want you spreading covfefe, and you guys are kind of dicks a lot of the time from the stories we're hearing, right? Okay. Alberta RCMP issued 7 tickets to Americans who stopped in Banff National Park to see the sights last week, despite rules observed by the Canadian Border Service Agency. That's the CBSA, by the way, the one that we've talked about. Sorry, I just wanted to see if that other stream was running. Quote, if individuals have been allowed to enter Canada for an essential purpose, they have to abide by the requirements provided to them by the CBSA, said RCMP Corporal Cat CPL. I don't know what CPL is. Deanna Fontenine. Fontenine. I don't know how to say your name. I hate names. I struggle. Send help. Non-essential travel between Canada and the United States is currently prohibited. The closure is currently scheduled to end July 21st. Then it was scheduled for August 21st. Now it's been pushed back again. It was Corporal. I was right. Yay me. Through that date, though that date could be extended, and has been. This is, the date on this one is June 21st. Posted June 21st and updated June 22nd. Oh. Under current rules, Americans can come through Canada to get home or get to work in Alaska, but they must travel along a direct path. When they need to stop for food, rest stops, they must maintain distance away from the public as much as possible. 7 tickets. Fontaine said at least 6 of the 7 tickets issued last week were related to Americans who had stopped for long periods of time to go hiking in Banff National Park. Each of the tickets was issued under an Alberta Health Act at a rate of $1,200 each. RCMP have received other complaints from residents after seeing U.S. plates in the area. Fontaine said, but noted that it is up to the discretion of each individual officer to determine whether a stop in Canada is appropriate along the route of transit. There's also legitimate reasons for the presence of a U.S. resident or a U.S. plated vehicle in Canada amidst the pandemic, Fontaine said. Quote, in the park, we do have U.S. citizens who have been there since before the pandemic started, Fontaine said, and that's not an issue. People have a right to live in peace. CBSA rules. According to the CBSA representative, travelers seeking to transit through Canada to Alaska will be required to substantiate their purpose for travel. Should their trip be deemed unnecessary or purely discretionary, they will be denied entry. Quote, should an officer have any doubts with regards to the traveler's intended purpose, the traveler will be required to prove/substantiate their purpose of travel, said Louise Carl Brissette Lesage, a spokesperson with the CBSA, in an email to CBC News. Brissette Lage said, I hope I'm pronouncing their name right. I apologize. I don't speak much French. I speak French. I have an easier time hearing it and understanding what's being said than actually forming my own or reading it out loud. Providing false information to officers upon entry is considered a misrepresentation and has consequences, including possibly being denied entry or being banned from returning to Canada. Failure to comply with restrictions could lead to up to $750,000 in fines and imprisonment of up to 6 months, he said. Asked about the reports of tourism showing up in Banff National Park on June 21st, Transport Minister Marc Garneau said a number of measures are in place and officials will continue to spot check. Quote, there will be cases where people do not do it, and we believe that that's an irresponsible thing to do. We're largely satisfied that most people follow the requirements that are put in place, he said. We cannot, quote, we cannot guarantee 100% that everybody's going to do it, and we are to some extent assuming good faith on the part of the people at this point in time. Fontaine said the priority of the RCMP was to educate travelers and ensure that those who need to quarantine are aware of the requirements. Quote, I'm not confident in saying that this is the trend, Fontaine said. This is not something that is being dealt with proactively. It is something that's being dealt with reactively. And so this was in June, and then over here, when they started trying to go by boat, was in August. So like a month later, everybody's like, guys, come on! Can you stop? I love the movie My Fair Lady. Okay, that's that's all I had. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. There's comments down below. Like, subscribe, share, ring the bell. I'll be back with another one of these probably tomorrow or the next day, depending on what's going on. I do, however, want to tell you guys I was really, really excited because I got featured on a very large League of Legends streaming channel for an art contest. I was just really excited to be recognized because I'm not going to be too specific about who the person was, but just because I don't want a bunch of people to go and troll him. If you do know who I'm talking about, please go say hi, give him a drop, give him a follow. He's good people. So that was a lot of fun. Poggers. I'm really excited, and I don't care really that much if I win the contest. I'd be really happy if I got a hat, though. He has merch that's got a hat that says, it's in Japanese, and it says Big Brain. So if you guys happen to see it, drop him a like, drop him a follow, leave him a comment, and tell him what you think. Let me know what you thought of the art that I ended up doing, and if you saw that. Let me know if you have any, put stuff down below about what your thoughts are about this, whether you think it's a big deal, whether you think it's kind of... I mostly just said these because I thought they were pretty funny. It's... You know, it's bad that there's a whole lot of bad things happening and that the people are getting sick, and that people are clearly ignoring rules, but the way they're doing it is kind of amusing to me. I don't know. I just wanted a little bit of levity for today. Anyway... What did I say? Like, comment, share, subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about how these bad Canadians are being like, can you stop? Please follow our rules. Okay, thanks. Anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time, and you have a good day. Bye.